Hi guys, and welcome to Where to Spend Your Marketing Energy. I just realized my microphone was way far away. So before we get started, we're live. If you're watching live, make sure you're watching this on the page on my website. So say hello in the chat room if you are there, and tell me if you can hear me okay. And we're on a little bit of a delay, so I'm gonna let you guys answer while I save something. Hello everyone. I love to see your little faces. Hey Cece, you all can hear me. That's fantastic. I appreciate it. So just waiting on this thing to load. Before we get started, like in the 2 seconds before we get going and everybody comes on in, I'm gonna drink my coffee out of my Band of Weirdos mug, and in the diffuser behind me is, I'll just show you. We have just one of my new favorite webinar blends, Wild Orange, the oil of abundance. It's uplifting, it's bubbly, it feels joyful. Melissa, which is the oil of light. I've been using that. It's really great if you are having low mood. It's amazing for depression. So I've had like a kind of rough 2 months, or not 2 months, 2 weeks, emotionally, not like anything bad is going on in my life, just emotionally. So Melissa, every day, all day, it's really helping since I remember to do it like 2 days ago. And then Kumquat, which is the oil of authentic presence, which is what I want when I'm here with you guys. So what we're going to talk about is where to spend your energy and your marketing. So to start with, this is like we're going to figure out where to put let me get comfortable for a minute. Let me make sure that you guys are seeing all the right stuff. You're not like too far away. I'm going to scoot you a little closer. There we go. How's that? Like I got to make sure that too much sunlight doesn't come in or else it washes everything out. But it's a really great and sunny day. It was raining earlier and was super dark. I was a little worried. So I'm checking in. Hello, Angela. Hey, Adrian. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Barbara. Hey, Sarah. Hey, I think your name is Kate, the person who's knit a chic. Excellent. The focus is better now. I'm glad to hear it. The computer auto focuses, which can sometimes be a problem. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you come over to the page that's in the doobly-doo below, and you can see the chat room there because I can't pay attention to the YouTube chat room, and it'll have links to everything I'm talking about. So what I'm doing now is actually posting in the links. So then I can save this page and it'll all show up for you. Let's stop at that point. Okay. Everybody's here. Everything's working. There's nobody saying it doesn't work, which is fantastic and unusual. Just saving everything. Okay, so hopefully I don't mess up the chat by doing this. All right. I've got you guys in front of me. I've got the camera. I've got my coffee. Yay. Hi, Emily. Hey, Mary. Hey, Hannah. It's so good to see you guys. Holy cow, there's a lot of people here. So this year, actually June 4th, 2010 is when I started my website, taraswiger.com. I had started my yarn company, Blonde Chicken Boutique, in 2006, but it's been 8 years that I've been helping people with their marketing. And that's not even why I started taraswiger.com. I thought it would be like my author website and like I'd be an author of craft books. And I just wanted something separate. Hold on. Of my yarn company site so that I could talk about anything I wanted to talk about as opposed to talking specifically for my yarn customers, because my yarn customers were all like new knitters who weren't interested in business, but I had made so many businessy friends. I wanted a separate place. So upon thinking on the anniversary, I decided I want to talk about with people, with you guys. What has changed in the last 8 years? I'm going to cover a little bit about how I got started, why I even started talking about marketing, then what marketing even is. This is so super important. If you just think, like, if you don't have a clear idea of what marketing really is, really hard for you to do it or to be effective. We're also going to talk about how to be effective, what's changed, how, like, the question you used to have to answer before and the questions you have to answer now in 2018 to be effective. We're also going to talk about what tools to focus on right now. What are my clients using that's working? As lots of you know, I work with hundreds of makers and artists, about 100 in the Starship, which I talk to them every week, and then even more, read my books, message me, listen to my podcast, email me about what's going on in their business. I get a couple emails every week that are long explanations of what's going on with someone's business and what they're dealing with. And then we talk and they tell me what's working for them and what's not working for them. So this has led me to a couple of tools. I'm going to just tell you the specific tools and how to be effective with them. And then also how to know, like, the key to being effective is how to know what to say and where to say it and when. So we're going to talk about how you can know that. And then I'm going to give a bonus to you guys who are watching live at the very end. So stick around for the bonus. So that's what we're going to talk about. Does that sound good? Everybody say yes. Hey, Rowena. Hey, Tani. Hey, Dawn. Excellent. There isn't a way you can move the chat box. This is not, this is a plugin on my site. It's, it kind of does what it does. So sorry about that. You kind of have to scroll back and forth. I have slides, so I'm going to flip back and forth between the slides and me. I like looking at you and talking to you. I think it's more interesting than just reading stuff on a screen, but I have slides so that I remember what to say. So the first slide I have to show you is how I got started. Let's switch over. And every time I do it, it takes like a second. Screen share. Here. Okay. So you can see this big. So I got started with my yarn company, Blonde Chicken Boutique. I found this image in my Google Drive. This was my first blog header. It's a picture of the yarn and it's the name in a font. And, you know, I was all about the pink and blue even way back then. So I got started selling yarn in 2006, kind of by accident. A yarn shop owner, and by the way, I'm not going to go deep into detail because a lot of you guys know my story already, but yeah, so a yarn shop owner came to me and liked the yarn I was dyeing for myself and asked me if I would dye some yarn that she had that wasn't, that was like all tangled, that was like mill ends. And I was like, okay, fine. And she was an artist, so she cared very deeply that the colors be perfect. And when I brought her the skeins, she was like, you need to label this. And I was like, I don't have a company. So I just made up a company. The name comes from a story my husband and his grandpa, do you guys want to hear that story? I don't know how many of you guys have already heard it. I think I told it in my very first episode of my podcast. I've written about it before on my site, way back before I actually started this site. So I started up a website for Blonde Chicken Boutique. It started out on Blogger, which is now owned by Google. It was a blogging platform. It was super straightforward. I started about 6 months later, I started an Etsy shop because Etsy just opened. So it used to be that your Etsy link wasn't even your name. It was like etsy.com/shop equals a number. My number was 124. So the first couple dozen, if not the first 100, were test sites for Etsy. So I was in the first 100 actual shops on Etsy, and then I didn't do anything with it. Totally wasted it. I've added some yarn on there that I had dyed, like cheap yarn I had dyed. It didn't sell. I didn't do anything. I didn't do any marketing. And when my business picked up was when I actually decided I was going to share my work regularly. And I've done a podcast episode about my first marketing plan. It was on a Post-it note. It was literally take pictures, spin every day, take pictures, post to Flickr, post to Twitter, then post to Etsy and go into the Knitty forums and talk on the Knitty forums. And keep in mind, this is like old school chat boards, and my signature linked back to my shop. That's all you could do. You couldn't link to your own stuff like in posts. You couldn't be like, hey, check out my yarn, because that would be spammy. So what happened is that through marketing my yarn, I grew that business to replace my day job salary. Now, I was a secretary in East Tennessee. I lived where I live now, in Johnson City, Tennessee. And there's a lot of people under the poverty line here. So I wasn't making a lot of money, but I replaced that day job salary, which was our main source of income. Jay was like underemployed at the time, not working many hours at low income jobs that like would change up his hours every week. And so for me to quit my job was a really big deal, because it meant that like my business was stable enough to cover all of our bills with its profit. That was the goal, is that I wanted to pay off our car and then be able to cover all the profits, all of our bills with the profits from my business. When I did that, I'm telling you all this because this leads to how I started teaching people, because my online friends freaked out. The online yarn community that I had been talking to on Knitty and on Etsy and had been like following on Flickr, they were like, wait, what? Like there were a lot of people who did their business instead of working, but it's because they had a spouse that was supporting the family, a spouse whose income was the provision for the family. And so when I wrote a blog post, I was really nervous to do this. That was like, my business is supporting our family. And I did that on my Blonde Chicken website. People were like, huh? What, how is that possible? How is that going to even work out? So I answered their questions, and then I created a Q&A that like on a teleconference line. So at one time, like right now I'm talking to you guys and you're all in the chat. It was that we would all dial in on our phones to a phone number and talk there. So I would talk and keep everybody muted. Then I could unmute people if they raise their hand by hitting a button. And this stuff still exists, but now we have live streaming, so we don't do it as much. And I just did Q&A for it. The first one ended up being 2 hours, and I did a second one 2 weeks later. And what I did is I had people sign up for an email list to get the phone information, because I wanted to kind of like vet everybody and I wanted to make sure they were serious. That email list then became where I could write and talk about my business. And I like have found old journals from this time, which is like around the end of 2009. I'm sending emails about whatever I'm learning in my business every week. And I realized I want to blog about it. I want to like have it someplace publicly so strangers can find it. So I started TaraSwagger.com. And from the very beginning, from that first Q&A call in mid-2009, everybody's question was, how do I sell more work? Should I be on this social media tool or that social media tool? Now, back in the day, it was Twitter and Flickr. Facebook groups didn't exist. Instagram didn't exist. Snapchat didn't exist. But the questions are basically the same, the questions people ask today. What tool should I be on? How can I make sales on those tools? What should I be doing? Why aren't I having sales? And that like really upset me. If you read my recent email, I said like, that really annoyed me, because I thought that's not the way to think about this. The way to think about this isn't how do I use these specific tools. The way to think about it is the basics of marketing. And this is what marketing is. It's knowing. Well, first, marketing is communicating with people who want to buy your goods in a way that shows them the value of your goods and a way that they can understand. It's effectively communicating with people who want what you sell. That's what marketing is. The questions you have to answer to have effective marketing, I'm probably getting ahead of myself in the slides because I'm watching you guys in the chat room, is who are you talking to? You have to know that. What are you going to say to them? And then sub question, what are you going to say to them, both in like, what is their language, and what are you going to say because what's important about your work? What do you need to communicate about your work? Some of the things that are true about your work aren't interesting, right? So if I'm talking to you about this essential oil, it doesn't matter that it has a black cap, right? It doesn't matter that the labels are color coded. That doesn't matter till after you have it. What matters before you have it is what it's going to do for you. So I was annoyed with people's questions, although they were all about marketing. First of all, back in 2009, the kind of whole community wasn't as educated about that it was called marketing, and marketing was something sleazy. And I feel like the term marketing, and I think I wrote a blog post about this way back then, the term marketing was like today how we think of the word sales, or how we say salesy, like that's negative. I don't want to be that. That's how people had about marketing. Over the years, and the social media becoming a thing and online marketing becoming such a much bigger, more effective way than like traditional marketing, like commercials and billboards, that has changed a little. But back then, I literally didn't call it marketing. My first class, which stemmed from all those questions people were asking me, when I realized you guys are like all over the board, you need to think systematically. You need to think, who are you talking to? What's your message? Where can you most effectively share that message? And when will you do this? That's a marketing plan. That everything I said has to happen before you worry about, should I be on Twitter or not? What should I post on Facebook or not? What hashtag should I use on Instagram? You first have to know those things. That was true then, and it's true now. The difference is back then, people didn't want to call it marketing. So my first class was called Share Your Handmade Goodness, because I was in the handmade world. All my friends and the people who asked me questions were in the handmade world. So I thought, this is something I can talk about. I can talk about how that changing my view of what marketing was and what marketing communication could be, I could help other people sell more of their work. That's why I did it. That's why I got started. I wanted to help people sell more of their work, because I knew that it feels amazing when you stop working at a job you hate with coworkers that are mean and kind of like not fun to work with, to then sit and watch Buffy and spin yarn. And granted, stay up late spinning yarn and labeling yarn and schlepping it to craft shows everywhere. But when you get to exchange the life that you didn't want for the life that you do want, it feels amazing. And I like still today, 8 years later, 12 years since I started my first business, I said, I want that for people who want it. Not everybody wants it. It's not going to suit everybody. A lot of people have jobs they totally love, in which case that's awesome. A lot of people just want to sell their thing on the side for a little extra money. That's awesome too. I want to help people have that feeling of loving their work and then sharing it with other people. Now, the main difference between what marketing was then and what marketing is now is how much our world has changed, how much the tools have changed, how much more opportunity there is now than there ever was before. That opportunity is amazing because it means amazing things for you, but it also means that there's more people doing what you're doing. And that upsets a lot of people. A lot of people get cranky because there's more openness. There's less gatekeepers, which is good if you're like a girl in East Tennessee who wants to dye yarn, or a girl in East Tennessee who wants to write books and teach and help other people make money. But it means that if you are hoping that you're going to be the only one doing this, it's just not true anymore. So let me share my screen because I wrote this out. I think it'll be helpful for you to see it. The difference between marketing then and marketing now is the question used to be, the question I used to get all the time, do I have to create content? So way back in the day, people would say, do I have to have a blog? Do I have to post on Facebook? Do I have to post on Twitter? The question was really, do I have to create content about my work, or can I just put my work on Etsy? Because Etsy was the way to have a website back then. Now it's put it on Shopify, put it on your website, whatever. That was a big question. Do I have to write about my work or post pictures about my work? Are my people even on social media? We can see like that is not the question people have now. You know, before you even have a business, especially if you guys are in the beginning, the first couple years of your business, you likely were already creating content online before you even had a business. And by creating content, I mean, you were posting pictures, you were posting updates, you were writing funny stories, you were sharing recipes you liked, you were like sharing pictures of your kids doing hilarious things. You were already creating content. So the question now is, how do I get people to see it amongst everything else they could be seeing? How does my content stand out? And what I'm happy about is we got over the question. Oh no, I meant to hit stop for sharing the screen. We got over the question, do I have to even create anything? You know now, right? you have to put more than just your product online, or you have to connect with people in person. But that whole question of, do I even have to do marketing? Hopefully, the answer is yes, you do. Now, marketing can be a whole bunch of different things. It can be going out in person and meeting people. It can be posting pictures on Instagram. It could be creating a Facebook group and regularly engaging with interested customers there. It can be creating an email list where people sign up to get something from you and you send them regular updates. It can be talking to shops and getting shops to carry your work. But you can't simply make your work, put it in an online shop, and people are going to find it. Now we all know that, right? Because we know there are hundreds of thousands of online shops, millions if you count all the big businesses. So now the question is, how do you stand out among everything else? For me, this is the major shift in what I've seen in the last 8 years. And so now I want to get into the answer, because I was writing this up and then I was like, oh, I need to answer that question. We need to talk about, how does it get seen among everything else and how does it stand out? So before I go to that, let me, so some of you are saying that I'm out of sync. The question, it's the page, it's your computer. You gotta refresh. I know. Also, when I go back and forth from screen sharing, it will throw me out of sync for a minute. It's annoying. But because so many of you learn visually, it'll help you to see the words. So that's why I like to do it. So sorry about that, Laura. It's a bummer. The good news is the recording of this should all be synced up. It's like what happens in the moment. So the question is, how do you get seen amongst everything that's out there? Here are the answers I've come up with over the years of talking to hundreds of makers and artists about their business. The first thing is, you need to know the tool you're using. You need to know the best practices. You need to understand if there is if the timeline shows up chronologically, or if there's an algorithm at work, and what do we think the algorithm rewards? And you also have to understand the culture. How are people on this tool? I used to talk about this a lot because people literally wouldn't understand how to be on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. That's changed a little bit. I think that now kids are growing up, like my little brothers are graduating, knowing the culture of the social media tools they're using. And they also pick up on the culture much quicker. So culture, like people are different in YouTube comments than they are in iTunes reviews, than they are in comments on Instagram, than they are on Instagram stories. There's just a slightly different culture. I'm not saying you're going to be different. I'm saying you need to make sure you understand the culture there, and you understand it by being there. Okay, the second way to stand out, and this is so hard for people to hear, but I'm not going to lie to you, I'm going to be honest, is to be consistently great. You need to talk, and I'm going to look you in the eye when I tell you this. Give it a minute to sync back up. You need to be consistently great on whatever tool you use. So if you want to stand out, I'm not saying you have to be consistently great on every possible marketing channel there is, but I am saying you need to decide on your marketing channels, and then you need to learn the tools, and then you need to show up consistently and be consistently better than just okay. If you want to stand out, if you want to meet and grow your audience and grow your customer base, and you want to increase your sales, you have to do more than just be okay. You have to be amazing. And it's rough. We're going to talk about that, but it's just the truth. The third thing is that you need to talk directly to your people. And by your people, I mean, do you remember how I said that what your marketing plan, what your marketing is to know who wants to buy your work? You're going to talk directly to the people who want to buy your work. So 7, 8 years ago, when I taught this, I would call them your right people. In my book, I call them your right people. What I mean by right people are the people who have self-identified as right for what you're doing. They are like, I am here for this. I want what you're doing. I love that you handmade bags. I love that you make dolls of all different ethnicities that are handmade and beautiful. And I love that you make jewelry out of melted recycled glass. Like, that is awesome. Those are the people you're talking to whenever you post. Now, people always are like, yeah, but I know my cousin listens, and I know, my third aunt twice removed also pays attention. So I'm not just talking to people who love my work. Right. Many other people will see your messages. This is the world of social media, but you want to make your message pointed at the people who care most. So that means that my college roomies, who are some of my best friends, they get probably nothing out of my Instagram account, because my Instagram account is for you people. It's for the people who I can help grow their business, either their handmade business or their doTERRA business. That's who I'm talking to. 99.9% of the time. If I want to talk to my college roommates, I'll send them a text. I'll post on my private, like on my personal Facebook page. And yeah, like, and my stepmom and I talked about this one time, because she's like, oh, I just love following you on Instagram. And I was like, really? Because I don't post like things you are interested in. She wants to know, how am I doing? How's my husband? How are the dogs? And she was like, no, but I love seeing what you're doing. So the people who love you, they're going to love it no matter what. But you want to make sure that if you're using your social media or whatever tool you're using for business, you're talking to the people who care. By the way, this applies to being great at craft shows. You want to talk, or farmers markets, or however you're selling your work, you want to talk directly to the people who are most into it, right? You want to talk to people who are coming into your booth as if they are going to love it, and they're in, and they want to know about it, and they want to sign up for your email list. You have to assume that first in order to give them what they want to know. So know your tools, be consistently great, talk directly to your people. And the fourth way to stand out is to be cohesive in all of your marketing. So the real way to stand out is for people to recognize it when they see it, to recognize it to be you. Now, I don't mean that you're famous and people recognize you on the street. I mean that when I see a post by Jolie, I know by looking at it and looking at the a little bit of what she wrote that it's her, even if her name wasn't on it. I know when I see Tawny Sundrop Jewelry's earrings and her post, it's her. The photos look like her. The voice sounds like her. No matter where I see it and where I travel on the internet, I will know it's her because it's cohesive and because she's sending a consistent message. The message is what is special about your work, and it's in the language of your people who are following you. And if Hannah said, we were talking about talking directly to your right people, and Hannah said, my mom's best friend finally unsubscribed from my email list, but not before she marked it as spam. I sometimes delete family members from my email list because they're not opening, or it just distracts me, right? So you can also remove people from your list. Okay. I love that you guys are chatting in the chat room. If you have any questions as I'm going, ask your questions. So does that make sense? The 4 things that we're going to help you stand out on whatever tool. And keep in mind, we're talking about any marketing channel. So I said earlier, marketing is communicating with the people who want to buy your work, and you're going to communicate them in a bunch of different ways. So let's just like, I just realized I don't have the thing I needed next to me. I'm going to get up and get it in a minute. A couple marketing channels in person, right? You might be at a show where you're talking directly to your end consumer, or you might be communicating with a shop owner who's going to carry your work. That's marketing. And by the way, you can empower that shop owner to sell your work better if you help her market your work. If you have a clear message and clear like printables, labels, things that she will use to market your work in her shop. There's in-person craft shows. There's in-person classes. If you're a teacher or you sell a product that requires them to understand how to use it, you can teach classes and workshops. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. There's social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. All of those are going to be used in really different ways. There's also broadcasting media, which I think of as slightly different than social media. So podcasts, YouTube. When I say podcast, I mean like audio podcast on the Apple Podcast app, or however you listen to podcasts, podcast, YouTube, which is its own whole thing, blogging. Those are like broadcast media. And then there's direct email marketing. That's another channel that's different from social media. It's different from broadcast marketing. Then there is conversations. So in my doTERRA business, So many more sales happen when I have one-on-one conversations with people. I teach them how to use the oils, how to get them into their life, and they understand the benefits because we had that conversation. Many coaches and consultants sell their work in the same way. You first do like a discovery call to like they talk about what your problem is and you see if they're a good fit and you like their style before you book them. That's another way that we don't always think about being a sales channel because we get so into like, oh, what's the Instagram hashtag? We forget we could talk to people. Oh, there's also networking, like going to conferences, trade shows, local events, and meeting people and having conversation. Somebody said, put up a slide and go get the thing I need to get. I'll never know. You'll never know. That's great. I love you guys. So does that make sense? Those are the ways to stand out. You gotta understand the tool you're using. So whatever channel you pick of the ones I talk to, or whatever like sub tool you pick under those channels, you got to understand it. You got to be consistently great at it. Not just okay, but great. You got to talk directly to your people, and it all has to be cohesive. Now, being cohesive and being consistently great go hand in hand. The more consistently great you are, the more cohesive of a identity you'll develop. Now, let's talk about what are the tools that I see that are working right now. So back in the day, it was Flickr, Twitter, being active in the Etsy forums, which I don't even know if they exist anymore because they became a whole mess. Being active on basically discussion boards is what they were back in the day. Now they're Ravelry groups for people in the yarn world, but not the same as the discussion groups and the email listservs like Yahoo groups, being active there. Also, email marketing worked then. That's changed a little bit. So let's talk about, and I'm going to show you a slide of what is working now so that you can write it down if you need to, or you can think this through. By the way, as I talk, what I'd like you to do is think, when I talked about ways to be great and to stand out now, ask yourself, first of all, that question that I said was the old question that we kind of all have the answer to now, like, do I even need to create content? Ask yourself, are you stuck there, or are you committed that you're going to have to market your work in order to sell it? That's the first question. The second question is, of the ways to stand out, which ones are you already great at? Maybe rate yourself 0 to 5 about where you stand, because the goal is not to be at 10 out of 10 everywhere or 5 out of 5, but really just to improve. Like, you'll see an increase in your sales if you go from like being a level 2 at something to being a level 4 at it. You don't need to be 5 out of 5 across the board. Shifting any one of those, becoming more cohesive, getting better at talking directly to your people, learning more about how to use a tool effectively, and being consistently high quality at it with lots of value, shifting any one of those things is going to increase your sales. So that's what I want you to remember. You don't have to go all huge big. When I hit my mic, can you guys hear it? Does it bother you? Okay. Tell me if that makes sense and if you have any questions about that. And then we're going to talk about the tools to use. I'm going to do a quick check-in before I share my screen. Okay. Oh, I'll tell you the other question that has really changed. Because somebody mentioned the Etsy forums still exist, but they're still a mess. One of the things that's really changed is that it used to be that my main rant to makers in marketing was stop talking to other makers and talk to your buyers. So when I would talk about talking to your right people, what I was saying is stop talking to the other crafters and artists who do what you do. That's not marketing time. That's excellent community building and strengthening and getting encouragement. And I have the Starship where a lot of different makers support each other and ask questions. That's not marketing. That's support, accountability, encouragement. You're going to have to spend a different amount of time marketing your work. And you're not marketing your work if you're talking to other people who do what you do. I feel like that, at least maybe it's because so many of you have listened to all my podcast episodes where I rant about that, and you've come to my classes where I teach you to stop doing that. But that's shifted. And now people are more and more realizing, oh, my friends who are also Etsy sellers are not necessarily my customers. Do you guys think that's shifted for you? Like, or do you get distracted by that still? That's okay, by the way. Like, just because I say something happened 8 years ago and it doesn't happen as much anymore, it doesn't mean everybody's on the same page. It's just I see as a community of small business owners and entrepreneurial women, we are like our collective knowledge is increasing all the time. Right? So it used to be literally, I would get questions. How do I open Instagram? How do I post on Instagram? I never get those anymore because people are more comfortable posting on social media across the board, right? I used to get questions like, I don't know how to start a Facebook account, or I don't know the difference between groups and my personal account. I very rarely, well, it used to be pages versus my personal account. I very rarely get those kind of questions anymore because our collective knowledge is increasing. And I think that part of that collective growth has been away from marketing to each other and more to talking to our direct people. What do you guys think? Yes. Okay, so this is an excellent question. We're going to stop here because this is about the consistency. So Hannah says, when you talk about making a new thing more consistent, do you expect them, I think you mean you guys, do I expect makers to continue with everything else at the same time, or do you swap out what you're focusing on? It's going to be totally up to you. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, I expect you to do the thing that's going to be best for your business. So if you've been spending time on a marketing tool that's been really ineffective, and so you're moving to a tool that you hope to make more effective, then yeah, you're going to replace whatever is the old thing you did with the new thing you're doing, right? Like when I started my podcast, I stopped blogging as much. Actually, not for like a year, but after a year, I was like, wait, I can't do both. And I found that the audio podcast was reaching more and more people and getting more and more feedback and seeming to be more helpful than my written blog posts. So I switched. So it's going to be up to you. If you add on another thing, or you replace it. So a lot of people move from doing craft shows to wholesaling. Those are both marketing channels as well as sales channels. And often they're having to do both for a while before the wholesale replaces what they were doing at the craft shows. They're doing both. And I'm going to scroll up a little because the question is moving. Somebody said, how do you apply that to knitwear pattern design? Tell me what you mean that. Why? Because we're slightly off, so I don't know what I said, and I'm saying a lot. I talk fast. So tell me what you're asking about knitwear pattern design. But yes, expect them to continue with everything else at the same time. Yes, so it's going to totally be up to you about whether you continue to do the same thing. When I tell you to get more consistently great, that's only if you want to stand out on this tool. If you want to use this tool to reach more people, we're going to talk about that in a minute. How do you find the time? How do you decide if it's worth it? But that is up to you, whether you replace something else. If you aren't doing any marketing and you want to become consistent with using Instagram, or let's say email marketing, because that's kind of the first one I always recommend people start with because it'll last you forever. If you want to start doing email marketing and you weren't doing any consistent marketing and you're going to get consistent on your emails, you're going to have to add that to whatever else you were just doing in your business life. And businesses everywhere are going through this shift of adding on marketing time. Now, you can hire people to do that. Once you get it set up, you can hire people to set it up. You can hire people to write it. You can hire out this stuff if you can afford to and you want to. And you can also hire out learning. So I'm going to recommend some of my classes I've taken or classes that I know are really great to learn some of these tools in depth. So you don't have to spend all of your time Google searching and just like reading crap before you get to the good stuff. You can take a class and get better at it. So I'm going to see if you updated your question on knitwear design. I find I spend a lot of time communicating with non-buyers on Instagram, Facebook, etc. They're my biggest commentators. So to be good with Instagram, Facebook algorithms, I reply, but they haven't led to sales. How do you find the right balance? So here's what I'm going to say. Replying is different than when I'm talking about, this is a great question. When I'm talking about talking directly to your right people, I don't mean not replying. I mean, write your post for people who are going to knit the pattern you sell. I assume you sell patterns since your name has knit in the title. So you want to focus your marketing communication, your broadcast on people who are going to buy your pattern. But obviously will still like comment and reply to people who aren't buying your patterns. And often, I mean, what happens in my business and in a lot of the students I work with is that people eventually become buyers, especially if you sell something low price, like a pattern. Like I might comment or chat with you forever before I decide I need your shawl pattern. Okay. And so then Anonymous said, the thing I was saying about getting out of just communicating with your other people and actually spending time marketing. She said, I found that many knitwear designers promote each other and talk to each other because we're all knitters, crafters, makers. So how do you differentiate between network and marketing? It's a really great question because networking, like getting in a relationship, if you're a knitwear designer and you talk to a yarn maker and you guys are going to do a kit together, that is talking to other makers. But what I'm talking about is you're not marketing to them. You're more connecting with them and building friendships as opposed to communicating. It's a different relationship, right? And how do you balance it or you differentiate between, here's what you're going to think about. Right now, what I'm doing, am I spending time talking to my buyers or am I spending time doing strategic partnerships? Which is another way of marketing, but it's less direct, right? In the same way that talking to a wholesale buyer is a less direct form of marketing, but it's going to get you sales. So I'm not saying don't talk to the people who are going to be like promote each other. And that's one of the things about the Starship members is they all share each other's work and have seen an increase in their audience just by being in the Starship and sharing each other's work and just supporting each other's work. But that's not, that's actually, so let's talk about this. In one of my tools for how like that will help you stand out, in one of the tools that I think are working really well in 2018, one of them is joint partnerships, teaming up with other people. So I've seen so many of my knitwear designers and yarn makers and purse makers have a lot of success by getting together and creating something new together. So that is absolutely a way to spend your time and energy, but you have to be honest with yourself. Am I just hanging out here chatting with other knitwear designers about how much our customers suck or how hard this pattern software is? Am I sitting here ranting or am I reaching out and saying, hey, let's do something together? Am I creating partnerships or am I just hanging out? And hanging out and getting support is super important in the same way that I would tell you, like, hanging out with people in your real life is super important. Just because you have a business and you're spending some time marketing doesn't mean you're not also spending time doing other things, right? Like you're going to still spend time with your spouse, still spend time with your kids, still eat lunch. All of this and talking about being consistent and awesome isn't taking time away from the other things, or it's not saying you're not going to do those other things. Okay. Angela, you've got a good question that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So you guys are asking, how do you find the right people on Instagram? How do you find the right people on Facebook? This is a class in and of itself. Like the first step. So I don't want to like not. Okay, so first, Anonymous says in response to what I said, that makes sense. Targeting the customers, but building useful relationships along the way. Absolutely. Like, and you might decide, and many of my students do, that for a quarter or a month, they're going to really focus hard on strategic partnerships. They've been hanging out in Ravelry groups, hanging out in the Etsy forums, hanging out on Instagram with their coworkers, is what I think of them, right? Other people doing your similar kind of business. And they might be like, holy cow, I have a whole huge community of coworkers and not a community of audience members. I'm going to spend this month talking to my coworkers about how we could work together in a way that's mutually beneficial, in a way that grows both of our businesses. Does that make sense? So like you can make that a marketing focus for a while. And I actually have a podcast episode coming out next Wednesday that's about setting your focus and then being cohesive within that focus. And that might be an area that you focus on is how can I How can I help build all of our businesses together? So, hey, Designs by Georgie, it's good to see you. Karen, right? So to go back to Novella's and Angie, I think it was Angie's questions about how do you find your customers on Instagram? How do you find your people on Facebook? We're going to talk a little bit about this, but the first part is that you figure out who is your right person. If you don't have a defined idea of who your right person is, like how are you going to find them? And then you're going to learn how those tools work and how you find people on those tools. So I don't want to go off in too many different directions. So let's talk about the tools that work right now. But so you know, we'll get back to the how to find people. If nothing else in the Q&A session at the end, because I want to go deeper in that, but I don't want to keep you guys here forever without getting to the stuff you came to learn. So what tools work right now? So before we get into this, I got to tell you, this comes from, if you guys are new to me, I didn't even start out by introducing myself because I think a lot of you are here because of my email. So I told you I have been working with makers and artists since the middle of 2009. My site went public 2010. That's what my 8th anniversary I'm celebrating right now is. And in that time, I've taught at dozens of conferences, and I've held dozens, probably over 50 online classes with students, and I have the Starship, which has been going since 2011, where every week I chat with makers and artists about what's going on with their business. And hundreds of people have come through the Starship. And when I go to these conferences, everybody who's a maker or artist, I ask them, hey, so what are you doing in your marketing right now? What's working really well for you? Or, hey, so I know you mentioned on Instagram you were trying XYZ. How are you liking that? Or, hey, you just started a podcast. How's that working for you? In the beginning, I was asking because I wanted the answer, like for my own business. That's how I figured out my marketing. But once I started working with other artists, I realized that like, I'm not a painter, so I don't know what works for painters. So when I meet a painter, I talk to them. How did this work out for you? How is this working? Are you seeing sales from this? I ask the awkward probing questions so that then I have this, I think of the Starship and especially that community, but also like my work as being a vessel for everybody else's answers. So then if I'm talking to 50 people at a conference and you and I have a conversation and you say, well, how could I do this? I'm not calling on my own experience, but on all those conversations that I've had to try to boil down what's working for people across the spectrum, right? Like in different kinds of industries with different kinds of sales models. This is why I started the doTERRA business a year ago, is that I could learn what will work in a totally different business model and with a totally different product. And I could see if the things that I know about marketing hold up. So I'll talk about the things I know about marketing in a minute. But these are the tools that have worked for me, but that have also worked for the hundreds of people that I've talked to. This is what keeps coming up again and again. This doesn't mean it's going to work for you. This doesn't mean this is the right exact tool for you, but this is what's working for other people. So this is where I would start. So somebody said, if you're new to social media, where would you start? First, so these are the tools that I see are working now. Instagram and Instagram stories. Instagram stories, OMG. If you don't know about Instagram stories, ask me in the chat and we'll talk about it in the Q&A after the class. Email. The very first thing I tell everyone is forget social media, go to MailChimp, create a account. It's free up to 2,000 subscribers. Get a form. You can put that form anywhere on your site. You can do it on any social media you use. And if you go meet people in person, you can have a sign-up sheet that you can take home and put into MailChimp. If you have an iPad, MailChimp has a program where people can sign themselves up on your iPad when you're at like a farmer's market or a craft show. Facebook groups. So Facebook is showing pages and business accounts to fewer and fewer people, but Facebook groups are rocking. Now, I don't know many, and I'd love to hear from you guys. I haven't met many makers of physical goods who are killing it with Facebook groups, but I know a lot of you are teachers or you have doTERRA businesses or educational businesses, which I guess would cover doTERRA and teachers. But basically, if you help people, a Facebook group is an excellent way for those people you help to chat with each other and for you to see what help they need. So Reen mentioned earlier, not knowing what topics to blog about. Having a Facebook group is an excellent way of like pulling a bunch of people at once. So is Instagram stories. And then the last thing, and the thing that is working so freaking well, is in-person events. Like, oh my gosh, I have seen some big multiple six-figure businesses move to doing in-person events because they are more productive and better marketing and better community building than social media. So basically it helps you get off of social media, because remember, this class isn't about social media. It's about what marketing works. And what marketing works is to meet people in person. And I've seen this again and again. Every time I do an in-person event, my business, bloop, it grows. Like by more than it was going to with my weekly podcast. And you can download the transcripts and all the different marketing things I do. In-person events are always, always the best. And my maker businesses, for those of you who are starting a maker business or an essential oil business, I think that covers like 98% of you guys are one of the two. In-person events is where you can start. If you have no list, you have no Facebook page, you have no customers, go do a craft show, do a farmer's market. First, you're going to need to figure out the things that are in your marketing plan, which we'll talk about in a minute. For all of these, before you can make any of these effective, you have to answer a couple questions. I'm going to escape here and check your comments. Yes. Adrian says, isn't it funny how the pendulum swings back to local and back to personal one-on-one contact? And by the way, yeah, so Dawn says, I know a few makers that have been able to use Facebook groups to sell, but not many. So yeah, I think it's something that works for educational type businesses better, but I wanted to include it because it's something that's working for a lot of people really well. And I end up talking to a lot of educators, both because I teach at conferences and because my doTERRA builders are all educators. So Facebook groups, in-person events, Instagram and Instagram stories, and what was the other one I said? Email. So several of you are saying, I only have this many subscribers. I have this many subscribers, but I've only made this many sales. So we got to go back to the things that make it work. You have to market your email list. I'm going to talk a little bit about that next week's podcast too. You have to invite people to join. You have to go be meeting people other places to get them on your email list, which is why I talked about personal and one-on-one. Because if you don't have anybody on your email list and anybody on your Facebook list, you got to go meet them. Like, you either have to go meet them or you need to build relationships with people who have an audience and work together with them and have them introduce you to their audience. But I got to tell you, when you're first starting out, you don't have a lot of value to offer somebody who has a big audience. Like when I said earlier, you could do joint partnerships for mutual collaboration. The reason I left it off the list is because when you're first starting, you don't have anything to bring to that mutual collaboration. And I'm not saying this to depress you. I'm saying this to be honest with you. Because if you're brand new and you haven't created some value or some audience or some platform that you can help the person you're joining up with, you got to think, what am I going to help them with? Now, if you can solve a problem for them, if they're a knitwear designer that needs samples in different yarns and you can provide that, if they're a yarn maker that needs patterns made up in their yarn, you can provide that. Even if you're brand new, but you have a pattern that'd be perfect for their yarn, they're going to want to talk to you about that. So the thing to keep in mind, if you can solve their problem or bring value in some way, they're going to want to partner up with you. But before you have people on your email list or Instagram, your Facebook, you gotta in some way meet people. So for a lot of you, that's going to be in person. For others of you, it's going to be joining up with somebody who already has a platform, either through a joint partnership or through wholesaling. So what I recommend to a lot of people who are like, I don't want to do craft shows, I have no audience, is okay, get your work together, make up a wholesale price list, go talk to shops that would carry your work. If you don't want to get good at online marketing and you don't want to do in-person events, then you got to, and basically what working with a shop that wholesales your work is basically being on someone else's platform. They've created the platform of the shop and you're selling your work there. Yes, Yuko. Hi, Yuko. Says, I'm totally finding it true. Craft shows and markets have been very consistent for me, and I'm planning on doing more this summer. Reen says, I need to figure out how to reach the woman who buys eclectic minimalist jewelry and does a bad night spending $200 on a pair of earrings. Yes. And obviously that woman exists. Like there's a lot of women who are buying jewelry like that. So Anonymous says, this was a stake in her grave because she's homeward bound. Not homeward bound, homebound. One's a song, one's meaning you can't leave the house. I'm sorry to hear that, Anonymous. But I want to encourage you, many people, here's the thing to ask yourself, has anyone else ever built a business when homebound? The answer is yes. Many of my clients and students suffer from fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, one who went through battling cancer, and still have businesses because they found other ways. Because remember what I said? Although these tools work for my people, and this is what I see working best, I'm giving you the this is what works for the biggest amount of people in the biggest way. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And it doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. It's up to you to figure out the ways that you can take all of these opportunities and make them work for you. And not just you, Anonymous, but all of you. This applies to all of you. Remember how I said in the ways to stand out that you want to move from like a 1 or a 2 to a 3 or a 4? You don't have to be 5 out of 5, and you don't need to use all of these tools. You need to pick one and get effective at it. So you might be thinking, okay, so like, oh no, before we get to how do you pick a tool, like how do you decide where to spend your time and energy? Because obviously you don't have time and energy for all of them. Here's what I have said. I told you earlier, I was going to be honest, even though it's hard. So here's the honest truth. There's no shortcut. Let that land. Make sure y'all heard me. There's no shortcut to making sales and increasing your sales except for to spend the time and the energy learning how the marketing tool works, spending the time and the energy learning what's effective for you. That means discovering who your people are, getting clear on who they are, and then getting clear on what your message is. What is special about your work? Why would they buy it? What's valuable? How do you explain the value of the price? And then how do you say it in a way that your right person can hear it and understand it? How do you speak her language? That's the second part of what is your message. Then deciding where can you best communicate with her and connect with her. Both what's best for you and what's best for her and what's best for your product. Like what will best show that off? What tools are there? And then when you pick that tool, getting effective and becoming great by becoming consistent. That's the process, and there's no shortcut to it. There is no way that I can tell you this is the way to find your people on Instagram. There are ways that you can, like I can talk to you again in the Q&A about like different ways to look for her, but if you don't have a really clear vision of who she is, you're not going to be able to find her. And if you don't know what's special about your work, once you find her, your communication won't be clear and effective. So there's no shortcut. And the thing is that everybody I talk to who has a business that they're happy with, that's like at least hit one of their goals. And of course, we all have more and more goals. So we're like, well, I'm never quite there yet. But the people I talk to who are happy with their business, that's what they say. There is no one thing. There's no like one thing that's crushing it. It's this, plus it's this, plus it's this. And it's learning and getting better and moving from like a level 3 to a level 4 on, say, my email game. Or it's moving from a level 2 to a level 3 on my being consistent on Instagram stories. That's what increased my sales this much. And then moving from a 2 to a 3 over here increased my sales this much. That's why I wanted to do a whole like workshop about this, because this is more than what I would normally say in a podcast. And because I wanted to get really practical, and I really wanted you to think about rating yourself about where you are in those ways to stand out, and then which of these tools do you want to work with. So to figure out which of these tools you want to work with, every time I click on screen sharing, it like needs to think about it for a minute. If you're hearing this and you're like, well, crap, Tara, I can't do that. This is a question to ask yourself. First of all, do you want it bad enough that you'll do it? And the second question is, do I want to spend the time and energy to learn this tool to get great at it? So many of you are thinking email, Instagram, stories, in-person events. I can't do in-person events. The first question is just go one by one. Do I want to take the time and the energy to learn Instagram, hashtags, Instagram stories, and get great at posting consistent content and connecting with my audience? You got to be honest with yourself about that question. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Whatever tool is in your mind that you need to get better at, or you want to get more consistent at, or that you need to learn more about, do you want to, and are you willing to? So that's how I should have posed the question. Are you willing to spend the time and energy to learn this tool and get great at it? If not, that's fine, but be honest with yourself. And if not, what will you do? Remember how I said you got to do some marketing of your work for anybody to hear about it or for your sales to increase? If you've got your products in your shop and they've got a price, they're online and available, or they're in a shop and available, you've got to tell people about it. You've got to share your work in some way for people to find you. So if you are not able or willing to spend the time and energy to figure out the tool of Facebook groups, which I did not for years. I have a friend, Caitlin Batcher. She does an awesome class on Facebook groups. Actually, I'm going to give you some resources in a minute. And I was like, I don't want to do it. So I didn't do it. But I did other things, right? I did my podcast. I did my emails. The same thing when I was starting the yarn company. I did a couple craft shows, got the first people on my email list from those craft shows. And then I realized what I'd rather do is write content on my blog for knitters to find me that way. What I'd rather do is go connect with them where they were, for them to get to know me and build trust that way than keep doing in-person events. Because I was working a day job and I didn't have the time or energy to do in-person events. So I would do an in-person event every 3 or 6 months, and I would do my other way of connecting online because that's what I was willing to do. So this is a tough love, Tara. For those of you who are in the Starship, you're used to tough love, Tara. Yes. I'm just scrolling back through what you guys said. Ruth says, no room for imposter syndrome in marketing, right? Yes. So here's the thing. We all feel like, holy crap, I don't know what I'm doing. But if you're connecting with some people and you're making some sales, you're learning what's working. The reason why I said, are you willing to spend the time and energy to learn the tool is because it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing thing. And all along the way, you're going to feel like you're crappy at it. Like, I haven't met anybody who's like, no problem, nailed it, I'm done. And any teacher who tells you they feel like that is full of BS. Because everybody I've ever talked to, whether they are teaching marketing or they're a professor of marketing at a university, anybody who's working on their own business feels like they are like trying to learn it all the time. That's why it helps to narrow it down on what you're going to focus on. So I did want to talk about some resources for those tools we talked about. So if you're willing to spend the time and energy to learn Instagram, and by the way, I don't teach classes on these topics. I'm going to recommend that you dive deep into these tools with someone who is especially amazing at creating a business around these tools. That's not me. I'm going to talk to you about what I can help you with to help you pick what tool to use. But once you've picked the tool, I want to say this before we go further. For Instagram, and I don't have a slide for this, and I wish I did. My friend Sarah Tasker, she was actually a student in one of my in-person marketing classes, because in-person is where it's at, in England. Her website is meandorla.com. Me and Orla, ORLA.com. She's Me and Orla on Instagram. She's got a ginormous Instagram following. She's a free like 7-day fix your Instagram ebook that's awesome, but she sells a class that's really, really awesome. If you want to use Instagram and you want to know how do you find people on Instagram and how do you create great content on Instagram, take her Instagram class. It's called the Instagram course, I think. But Google Me and Orla, she'll pop up. And I can also put the links below in this below this page. is what I'm trying to say. If you want to get great at Facebook groups, Caitlin Batcher has a Facebook group class. You'll have to read the sales page to see if it's made for makers and artists. I'm not 100% sure. I know a lot of my students have taken her class and really, really enjoyed it. When it comes to email marketing, Abby Glassenberg has a Creative Live class on email marketing. So in my class, Craft Your Marketing, I teach you the basics of how to get set up and how to figure out what to send. If you want to create a newsletter kind of thing and you want the career that Abby has, like journalism and writing for the industry, her class teaches you how to create a newsletter for that. And I just like Abby, everything she does. Her website is While She Naps. And when it comes to in-person events, it really depends on what you want to do in person. So I have a class that a lot of you guys have used and liked, created way back in the day, that's only available in the Starship, called Rock the Show. And it just guides you through like checklists, questions to ask yourself, how to decide if you should do a craft show. Once you decide to do a craft show, how to figure out how much stuff to take, like how much product to take, and then a checklist. And if you want to do like an in-person teaching thing, you want to find somebody who's doing that. So if you're in my doTERRA team, obviously I teach you how to do those workshops as effectively as possible. And if you are doing some other kind of in-person event, you can just ask me and I'll look for, I'll look for resources that'll help you do that. So we've talked about the ways to stand out, the tools that are working right now, and deciding if you're willing to do the work. So you might be like, okay, yes, I am willing to do the work on one of these, but where do I start? Which tool do I pick? A couple of you actually asked that. So I made a slide for this. So let me share it because it's got written down stuff. Jeez, I wish like Google needs to make like a big button on Hangouts that immediately screen shares. All right. So before you pick any tool, these are the questions you need to answer. Who are your people? Like, who are you talking to? Are they using that tool? How are they using the tool? Then what, and by the way, you can't figure out if your people are using the tool until you identify really specifically who your people are. What is your message? What are you trying to communicate, and how can you communicate it best? So where can you best share it? Is it best communicated via tutorials on YouTube? Is it best communicated via photos on Instagram? Is it best communicated in a group setting on Facebook? You have so many different options for how you share your message. Where can you share it best? That's going to help you pick the tool. And then when will you share it to be most effective? Because without a plan for consistency, you won't be consistent. So here's the really great news. Those 4 questions is a marketing plan. That's it. To create a marketing plan, you need to know the answers to those 4 questions. And then, I'm not kidding, you can take on any new tool. You can learn the culture of it. You can get good at it. You can become consistently great because you'll know who your people are, what your message is, and how best to share it, and when you have time to do it. So if you're also thinking, I don't have the time to share my work with people, but Tara tells me I won't have a business if I don't share my work with people, the answer is a marketing plan. Seriously, a marketing plan and a content schedule. So to answer the questions, who are your people, where they best, like you can't just, if I just ask you them, you're not going to have the answer off the top of your head. That's okay. Because to answer those questions, you need to dig deep. I need to ask you a bunch of other questions. And by the way, I've been asking people these questions for years. So in my very first class, Share Your Handmade Goods 8 years ago, I asked those questions. In my book, Market Yourself, I dig even deeper and ask those questions on all kinds of topics. And students tell me that that class helped them identify for the first time what is special about their work and how should they communicate it, which makes every bit of marketing you do better. Your email marketing, your Instagram marketing, your Facebook marketing, because you figure out, what should I take pictures of? How do I communicate this? What do I write about it? What do I say? When you ask yourself those questions. So my class, Craft Your Marketing, that's what it does. Craft Your Marketing walks you through digging deep into these questions over the course of 5 weeks. So I am going to find the thing I was looking for and share. Oh, I can't share this slide until I exit out of it. That's, if you're wondering, how do I make this marketing plan, Tara? Like, what? That's what I hope you do. So craft your marketing. Let me share the screen where I tell you what it is so you can read it. And then I'm going to check for your questions after I explain what's inside craft your marketing, for those of you who are interested, I'm also going to tell you about a bonus, and then I'll answer your questions. We'll do a Q&A. Okay. So craft your marketing is a class that guides you through 5 weeks. You get weekly audio lessons emailed to you. It's on a site where you can download the audio lessons and the PDFs. There's workbook pages each week to help you answer questions. You also get access to the PDF of my book, Market Yourself, because Market Yourself has the base lessons you need to learn, and the class is going to guide you through actually doing it. Because I made Craft Your Marketing because what I heard from people is the book is so dense that what happens is I get a chapter in and then I have a bunch of things to do, right? Like I actually apply it to my business and then I forget to come back to the book. So Craft Your Marketing brings you back to doing the next step every week. Plus, I'm closing Craft Your Marketing June 8th. So if you join before it closes, you're going to get a live Q&A with me, which will be like this, but all me answering your questions for as long as you have questions. Like there is no, oh, we're running out of time, I'm going to come back to that. We're going to answer everything for as long as you want. These Q&As go anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, and we dive deep into really specifics for your business because we have the time to do that. Also, the book Market Yourself doesn't go into email marketing because that was just becoming a thing when I wrote the book in 2012. So I created a brand new lesson. It's like several pages on how to start your email marketing and what to send to people in order to be effective. And the main thing about this class, and the thing that people keep saying to me about it because I asked Starship captains who have taken the class, like, what do you like about it, is that it's applicable. So the podcast, if you're like, okay, how's this different than the podcast like inspires you and gives you things to think about. The class is really, really applicable. It makes you apply it to your own business. What are you going to do in your business? Who are your people? And then I ask you a bunch of questions to help you figure it out. What is your message? And then I ask you a bunch of questions to figure it out. It's not about me teaching you theory. Like on the podcast, I talk a lot about theory and philosophy. The class is getting you to do it in your own business. So if you have any questions about that, ask me now in the chat room. It's open now at tarasweiger.com/CYM. And there's a bonus for those of you who buy it today. I'm going to grab it real quick. Here I am. Oh, I didn't stop sharing my screen. I just, the escape button should really, okay. Now I'm checking your chat room questions. So here's the thing. If you buy Craft Your Marketing today, because you've been hanging out with me, 50 of you have been hanging out with me for an hour, you're going to get a signed copy of Market Yourself in the mail. When you buy the class, not today, if you choose to wait, you get a PDF version of the book. So you still read the book on your computer. It's not an ebook version. It's a PDF version. Getting the publisher to make an ebook version has been a whole technological crisis. I'll have an ebook version in the future. Everybody who joins Craft Your Marketing today is going to get a signed copy sent to you in the mail today, May 31st. And that is May 31st in whatever your time zone is. So if you're on the West Coast or you're in Australia, if you're in Australia, you have through June 1st, but everybody else has through May 31st. So you're going to get a free physical copy of Market Yourself sent to you if you buy today. If you don't, you'll get the PDF copy. If you buy at all, you're going to get any updates I make to this class. So I've updated this class multiple times, added new lessons. I've also added now a whole resource. Every week comes with extra resources. So there are podcast episodes where I like to hit it from a different topic than I covered it in the class. There are resources that my students have created. Like Grace wrote this whole article about how to hack Instagram and how to use Instagram hashtags to find more people. the Yarn Shop, the Yarn Over Truck, shared their marketing plan template with us, their content calendar template. I share my content calendar template. So there are not just worksheets to help you dig deeper into who your people are, what your message is, what tool you're going to use in actually making a plan, but then there are extra resources so you can just keep learning more. So the other thing I wanted to say is, for the first time ever with this, I offered a package of, like, many of you either already use essential oils or want to use essential oils to help manage your mood. So I included, you can get a package. It's a huge discount. You get the class and my 6 favorite blends for mood management. So this is the emotional aromatherapy is what they call it. It helps you. There's Motivate, which is what I use in my workday. There's Passion, which will help you if you're feeling down, like get more inspired. There's Cheer. So if you're having a gloomy day, you can cheer up. There's Peace. If you're feeling stressed about your marketing plan, apply some peace. This is the oils I use when I work. So if you want to use these while you work on your marketing plan, I did a bundle of it together. And if you don't yet have a doTERRA account, if you have a doTERRA account, I'll just send you this. Just tell me that. If you don't have a doTERRA account, I will give you free membership to doTERRA, which is 25% off anything you buy in the future, access to my course about how to use essential oils, and access to our awesome Facebook group for essential oils. So that's just one of the bundles. You can do just Craft Your Marketing. You can do Craft Your Marketing today and get the book, or you can do the bundle with essential oils. And I want to tell you that if you heard me mention the Starship and the other classes and how there's weekly accountability and monthly Q&As, because every time I open a class, people are like, I want to take this class in the Starship. I also opened the Starship. So the Starship's open right now too. It's at taraspiger.com/starshipbiz. And you will get access to Craft Your Marketing starting next week. If you buy it today, you get the physical book. And if you want to get the essential oil, send me a message and I'll give you the same discount on it. But basically what happens is the Starship, you pay monthly for how long you want your membership. It's $99 a month. And you get access to Craft Your Marketing this next week, weekly chats with me and the other members where everybody gets a chance to check in on what they're working on, monthly live video Q&As, which are like this, but all time for your questions, and discount. I mean, any new class I create, you get for free. Plus you get access to the library of free classes that aren't available anywhere else, that are over $1,500 in free classes. So like if you wanted to pay yourself and Craft Your Marketing and map making, all of those are available in the Starship. So now I'm going to answer your questions. I am first, if you refresh this page that we're on in a minute, the link will show up below, a description of what's included, and a link to actually buy it. It's going to show up under this. There, I just hit update. So in a minute, click refresh, and you'll have links to it. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down through the chat room. You guys have posted a lot since I last looked. So that is, you guys are having all kinds of ideas. Oh, Christina said she couldn't see the chat room. It's supposed to, on your phone, show up as like a banner at the bottom of the page, but just like the most recent message. It doesn't work on all phones. Yes, so Hannah says, every time I see the question, what makes your work special, my mean brain says nothing. Any tips other than more therapy to help make that go away? So how about we don't make it go away? How about we ask more detailed questions? So to start with, in the class in the book, we start with the amazingness of you. We just start with things you like and things that you're drawn to and things that make you happy, because that's going to have influenced your work. And then we go into very specific questions about your work. So it's not just the question, what makes your work special? It's a bunch of sub questions that dive even deeper. And the audio lesson goes even deeper into how to think about what makes your work special. Dawn says, I've done Craft Your Marketing and I go back to it over and over because it's so helpful. So that's the other thing. Once you buy the class, when you finish, you can either buy all at once or you can pay with a payment plan. When your payment plan finishes, then you have anytime access to Craft Your Marketing. So you can download the materials to your computer and have it forever on your computer. You can also log into the classroom anytime you want. So you'll get emails guiding you through it each week, And you can access it anytime after that, again and again. Like, just keep the emails, because the emails tell you where each lesson is. I mean, but once you get to the site, then you can click through the lessons. It's very easy. Yeah, so many of you are saying that your brain does the same thing. Oh, and Bronwyn suggested listen to a book. Oh, she listened to a book called Your Inner Critic is a Big Jerk by Danielle Crisa, and that helped her. So the book was called Your Inner Critic is a Big Jerk. You know, I really like the book. It's Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. She talks about, instead of trying to get rid of your inner critic or fear, the main thing is to not let it drive the car. So it's always going to be with you. If Elizabeth Gilbert, who is a mega successful author, still has fear about like imposter syndrome, you don't have to, she says you don't have to get rid of it. It's never going to go away. And that's definitely been my experience. Earlier, when I said everybody who says that they've got their marketing figured out and has no problems is full of BS, we're all either imposter syndrome, fear that we're going to mess it up. The inner critic is saying, like, I don't know why you think you should share your work here. Your pictures aren't pretty enough. That's going to show up. The trick is to not let it drive the car. So my other trick, Hannah says, is a class included in the Starship? Yes. I posted about that in the chat and in the last podcast recording I posted there, that you guys are going to get the coupon code next week in your weekly Wednesday email. So the class is included in Starship. You probably posted that before I said it just now. Yes, the Market Yourself worksheets can be used for the class. The class is going to reference the Market Yourself worksheets and give you new worksheets. And I put all of the class worksheets in a workbook together. When you get to the end, you can, or even the beginning, you can print that workbook all together. So you have it all together if you want to. Oh, thanks, Merity. Thank you for sharing your posting plan. It was brilliant. It was like a year or two ago that you shared that. It was so awesome. Yes, so you guys have all answered Hannah's question. And since Instagram is so important, is there a good reference for taking better pictures? Yes. Sarah's website, Me and Orla, she specifically talks about taking better pictures. That's her focus of how to create a better Instagram account, is having higher quality photos and basically all the parts of Instagram, which are photos, your description, and hashtags. She talks about all of it. Oh, look, so Creative Live has the Your Inner Critic is a Big Jerk video. That's excellent. So you guys search that up. Yes. So did you guys have any questions that you asked earlier that I didn't answer that you'd like me to answer? And do you have any questions about the class? So a lot of you are in the Starship. You're getting the class for free. If you're not in the Starship, you want to get the class as part of your Starship membership, do that. If you click refresh right now on this page, you will see the Craft Your Marketing information below this page, and you will see the button to purchase it. If you're watching the recording later, make sure you're watching it on my site. Click through to my site to see it. I'm going to have deleted the chat box, so you won't know what I'm talking about when I say the chat, and you just have the info under this. So just scroll down. I'm also going to link up those other resources, Caitlin's and Sarah's. Yes, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a minute to post your questions about either the class. You might ask questions about, like, if the class is for you and your specific situation. That's a question I get asked most often. So I mean, I'm happy to answer that. Your question might be, does it cover this specific topic? Or if you have a question about the things that I shared about how to make your marketing effective. To sum up, while you guys post your questions, I'm going to talk about that, Laura. I'll answer that question. Here's an outline of what we covered today. This always helps me remember what I learned. The question used to be, do you have to create content online to market your work? Most of us now realize if we want to do online marketing and not just market to wholesale shops or do in-person marketing, Yes, we have to create content. And the question is, how do you stand out? And the answer to how you stand out is you create consistently great content and you post consistently to whatever it is you're doing. You talk directly to your people and you have a cohesive message that you share all of the same thing, all of the places. You also need to know the tool you're using, learn the best practices, learn how the algorithm works, learn the culture of it, because that's going to help you become great. And posting consistently is going to help you create cohesion. So the tools I specifically like is Instagram and Instagram stories. Email marketing has always been effective. All of you are here because of email marketing. Facebook groups for educational kind of people, and in-person events are still so excellent, both for networking with other makers who you could do joint partnerships with and for sharing your work with people. So that might be craft shows, conferences, trade shows, if you wanted to get into wholesale shops. And then the other main point I made is that there's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. So you need to ask yourself, which of these tools are you willing and able to learn about? And are you committed to doing something to share your work to increase your sales? Because that's the only way to increase your sales, is to share your work with new people or share new work or increase your prices. There's the only way you're going to make more profit from your business. So if you're willing to do the work, you got to learn about the specific tools. But before you can even pick the tool, you need to know, who are you talking to? Who is going to buy your work? What can you say to her? Like, what can you say that is effective when it comes to marketing and building loyalty and trust and delight with her? Where can you say that? That's when you're going to pick the tool. And then when and how. How is it going to fit into your life? That's making a marketing plan. So answering those 4 questions is what Craft Your Marketing is all about. So if you feel like, I'm not sure what tool I should pick, and Tara said, who are my people and what is my message? And I don't know that, then Craft Your Marketing is going to help you answer that. What I was supposed to do is put a bunch of testimonials, because many people have taken this class and sent me amazing results. And I didn't have time to do that. So I'm going to share them on the sales page. You can go to tarasweiger.com/CYM to register now, or if you refresh this page, there's a button. But if you want to read way more details about what's in the class, tarasweiger.com/CYM. And if you want to do this aboard the Starship, tarasweiger.com/starshipbiz. Anonymous says, one of the hardest bits is waiting for the consistent things to snowball into results. Yes. Anonymous also said, I think this is a different Anonymous, I can learn the tools, but I still need to figure out what to say. That's what Market Yourself and Craft Your Marketing help you figure out, is what to say, how to communicate effectively to your people, how to identify your people so you know what even she wants to hear about, and then what is special about you and your work and how to share it. Because that's the thing. If you learn the tool, but you don't know what to say, it's not going to be very effective. So Laura, let's talk about Instagram stories in just 1 second. I want to see if there's anybody else's question. Thanks so much for being here, Hannah. Oh, it's Rain. Yeah. Oh, and that's me and Orla's link. Tara, I want to get the courage to use your YouTube class to show my process when creating artwork. Excellent. So Angela brings up a great point. If you want to learn more about the tools of YouTube and podcasting, I think those are where marketing's going, and so few marketers are using them. I talk all about why they're effective at marketing your work, and step by step, how to set up a channel, how to create videos that will sell your work in a Creative Live class. If you Google Creative Live in YouTube, or no, Creative Live Tara Sweiger, it'll pop up. I can also give you the link below this. I'll edit this page. Let me write that down. And so Laura, let's talk about Instagram stories. If anybody else has a question, post it now, because we're in a little bit of a delay, so that I can see it before I go. Okay, I'm making a note about the YouTube class. Resources mentioned. Instagram, me and Orla. Facebook, Caitlin. YouTube, Tara's Creative Live class. Okay. So once I end this, I'll add in those links. You can just refresh this page and those links are going to be there. I'm also going to send you all the recording. So you might be watching the recording later, in which case you got all the links in your email and under this page. So I'm glad so many of you liked it. Thanks for saying thank you. Yay, Don's going to launch a podcast. It makes me happy. Okay, so Laura, Instagram stories. When you say you're not sure how to use them, you know how to start it up, right? Like a year ago, I actually did a in the Starship Q&A. They asked about Instagram stories, and I did a whole tutorial about how to make an Instagram story. So that's the kind of thing we cover in the Starship Q&As every month. But the quick, taking a drink of water to like get my thoughts clear. My quick answer to this is, if you know how to do, like, you know how to open up the phone. My phone isn't near me. Then let me scroll back up to what your question was. Hey babe, I'm still recording. Oh, I scrolled way too far. Okay, sorry. Tell me what your specific questions are as I try to find what your initial question was. Oh, okay. So you don't get them. So they show up at the top of your Instagram. They are updates from people's real-time updates. And what's effective about them for sharing your work, no matter what your work is that it helps, it builds people's trust, and it connects them in to what you're doing and why you're doing it really quickly. So you shoot an Instagram story. It can just be 15 seconds, I think. But you can keep doing them back to back to say something longer. If you guys ever watch mine, you know that I go on for quite a bit. And they disappear after 24 hours. You can now save them on highlights on your main page, on your like Instagram profile page. But what they're letting you do is in real time tell somebody what you're working on in your business, which your customers are fascinated by. They also let people see your real life, where your Instagram feed, in order to be effective, is going to be more edited and more cohesive and more pretty. Your Instagram stories let you share the stuff that's real, that's connecty, that isn't as pretty. It doesn't mean that it's always ugly. Like, I shoot a lot right here in front of my background because this is where I'm sitting when I'm working. And I shoot a lot like in the car. Hey guys, I'm going to go do this. And I just had this question for you. For me, they're really, really effective at getting people's feedback on an idea before I create it. So if I need podcast topics, if I need to know, should I create this product or not? If I need naming help, I ask Instagram. People, the only way to respond, they can't leave a comment. They send a direct message. And when it comes to why they're effective in the technology sense, it's because when people are watching your story and direct messaging you, Instagram's algorithm says, people like Laura's stuff. I'm going to keep showing them Laura's stuff. So when you do a post about a new product in your Instagram feed, in your actual pictures, more people who have interacted with your Instagram story are going to see that picture in their feed. So it's one way to keep the algorithm liking you is to regularly ask questions on Instagram stories and have people send you the direct message answering your question. The other thing is, it's a great thing to get out information that's going to end in 24 hours. So if you do any kind of shows or in-person thing, hey guys, today I'm getting ready for my show that's a Saturday. Make sure that you come. It's here and here. Or click the link in my profile for the information. 2 days before, oh my gosh, crunch time, getting ready. The actual event, hey, here's my booth setup of the actual event. Hey, this customer just came up and told me she bought one of my things last month and she loved it and she's wearing it today. Hey, let me show you on my Instagram stories. Literally every time that I've ever asked anybody, can I show you on my Instagram? They're always like, yes, and super flattered. So this has been people that I see carrying my book. This has been people who come to an essential oil class and are like, have this amazing testimonial. I'm like, hey, can you say that into the camera? That is what it's really great at. So I'm going to scroll down to see. Yes. Okay. So the stories can be a still. They don't have to be you talking to the camera, but I can tell you, and me and Orla actually did a Sarah of Me and Orla, did a thing where she challenged her followers to do a face-on video because they're so effective. So she was like challenging them to get out from behind their camera, but you can absolutely point your camera at whatever and take a picture and then write text over top of it and say what you're doing. So, and like, I'll do a series of photos on my run of the flowers that are blooming. Like, that's not going to sell a class in that post, but what it's going to do is continue to connect with my people and just strengthen our relationship. Like when I post pictures of the peonies, people are like, oh my gosh, I have peonies, here are mine. Or when I post, my husband's coming down with strep throat, people are like, oh my gosh, I hope he's feeling better. Like it's just increasing our relationship. And if you feel like you don't have a lot of interaction with your customers, Instagram stories, the best way I've found for getting regular interaction, even more than my Facebook group. Yes, the algorithm booth. I did just an Instagram story. Yeah, so go follow Dawn. She is your Round Table or Fairy Tale Creations. I always say the wrong one. Your Fairy Tale Knits on Instagram, right? Yes. Dawn asked, do you think it would be better to add another Instagram story post every day or another Instagram post? Okay, so you mean like you're scaling up? Oh, there's a great, I linked to it on my Facebook. Hold on. CoSchedule did a study about what consistency in Instagram posting does. And basically it tops off, your results top off once you're posting 5 to 7 times a week on your Instagram feed. So you don't need to post twice a day. You don't get better results from posting twice a day in your Instagram feed. So I would do once a day, 5 to 7 days on your Instagram feed, and then more Instagram stories. So if you're going to only add one thing, you're already doing a daily photo on your Instagram feed, I would add an Instagram story. Yes, excellent. I'm glad that it makes sense. And Laura, you don't keep yourself from doing stories because you don't want to do front-facing videos. What I did for weeks is I did all Instagram stories that were not front-facing. And I have a freaking YouTube show. And I just did pictures. Because here's the thing. I Instagram story before I look like this. So like, or late at night when it's dark. So I'll show a picture of my sewing or of my dogs, and I'll say whatever I need to say, right? Like, or I'll upload a photo, like a recent Instagram story just before we got on was, hey, this webinar is starting in 10 minutes. And it was a picture that said the name of this webinar. So yeah. Don't let not wanting to be on camera stop you. You can always be on camera later. So tons of you are sticking around through this long Q&A. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I don't think I missed. Okay, so Dawn on Instagram is instagram.com/fairytaleknits. So you can see the recent story she did about her trunk show if you want some examples. Just scrolling back up. If I missed your question, it's just because I missed it. So do ask your question. As a reminder, we didn't go over any specific tool because first you need to know who your people are and what your message is before you worry about a specific tool. Then dive deep into this specific tool. So what a lot of my Starship captains do is they go through Craft Your Marketing. They get a good plan for what their marketing plan is going to be. And then they realize this is the tool I want to succeed at right now. So I'm going to focus right now on getting really great and consistent at this tool because I know once I get consistent, it'll just be part of my schedule. Then I can get consistent at this second tool. So maybe you saw my list and you're like, okay, I'm going to be consistent on Instagram stories first, Instagram main posts, and then get consistent on Instagram stories. And after 2 months of that, then I'm going to get consistent on my emails. And then after 3 months of that, I'm going to start a Facebook group. And that way, and so then when you're doing that, take a class for Instagram. Once you know what your marketing message is, like Me and Orla's class, really, you need to know what your message is before you take it. The same thing with Caitlin Batcher's Facebook groups class. You need to know who your people are. Who do you want in this group before you take the class? Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you do if you don't know who you're talking to and you're not talking to them effectively, right? Okay, so thanks all for being here. I hope you have an excellent, excellent day. I'm going to link up the resources at this page. Remember, only if you join today are you going to get a copy in the mail of Market Yourself, signed by me. I don't think this one is signed yet. Your book is probably going to arrive after class starts. So when you join Craft Your Marketing, you'll get a welcome email right away, and you can log into the site. And right now it's set that you can see all the lessons. You can start immediately. The emails are going to start on Monday, and you'll get one each Monday, and then you'll get the resource guide each Friday. So you get the lesson each Monday, and then more resources on Friday if you want to dig deeper. Here's the thing to remember. If you are just staying on top of the lessons and the reading each week, you can save those resources. And when the class is over, then dig deeper into the topics that you needed to dig deeper in. So that's at tarasweiger.com/CYM, or scroll down on this page. You can buy the tarasweiger.com/CYM has tons more information about the class. If you buy today, you'll get this sent to you. It's gonna, I have to reorder these. So it's gonna take about a week or two before you get these in the mail, longer if you're international, but you're gonna have PDF copy immediately when you join. Lessons will start on Monday, and the class closes, I didn't really talk about this, it closes January 8th. So it's not going to be open for you to join again after January 8th unless you're already a Starship member. And the Starship will close on January 8th as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for asking your excellent questions. Thank you for saying thank you. I appreciate you guys, and I'm here to help. So if you have any questions, you're watching the recording, the chat room isn't under this video if you're watching the recording, so send me your questions. I'll put my email address up there. Send me your questions, ask me your questions, and I will be happy to help you. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.